When she finally revealed her face, he collapsed to his knees. She was his dead fiancée, buried 8 years ago.
The autumn wind cut through the small mining town of Copper Ridge as Elijah Tanner walked down the muddy main street. His boots were worn thin, his coat patched in 3 places, and the coins in his pocket totaled exactly $1.47. He had come down from his mountain cabin to buy flour and salt, nothing more. The lonely life of a trapper did not afford him luxuries, but it afforded him peace. And after the war, peace was all Elijah wanted. A crowd had gathered near the general store, and, despite himself, Elijah found his feet carrying him closer. A wooden platform had been erected, and upon it stood old Silas Morton, the town's most unpleasant merchant, alongside several figures wrapped in traveling cloaks. "Indentured contracts, folks," Silas announced, his voice carrying over the whispers. "These poor souls owe debts they cannot pay. 5 years of service to whoever purchases their contract. Legal and proper." Elijah's stomach turned. He had seen enough human suffering to last 10 lifetimes. He was about to leave when his eyes fell upon the smallest figure on the platform. A woman, her face hidden beneath a worn hood, her shoulders trembling despite obvious efforts to hold herself still. Something about the way she stood, proud even in humiliation, made him pause. The bidding began for the others. Strong men went for $50, $60, women with cooking skills fetched $40. But when Silas reached the hooded woman, he laughed cruelly. "This one here has been nothing but trouble. Will not show her face, will not speak. Who knows what defect she hides? I will start the bidding at $5. Silence. No hands raised. $3 then. Surely someone needs a house servant." More silence. Men shook their heads. Women whispered behind gloved hands. $1. Silas spat in disgust. $1 single for 5 years of labor. Elijah watched the woman's hands clench into fists at her sides. In that small gesture he saw not shame but dignity. Without thinking, his rough hand rose into the air. $1, he said quietly. Silas looked relieved to be rid of her. "Sold to the mountain man. Come collect your property," but climbed the platform steps anyway. He signed the contract that was pushed before him, handed over his precious $1, and gently touched the woman's elbow. "Come with me, miss. I will not harm you." The crowd parted, some snickering, others pitying. Elijah led her toward the livery where his mule waited, loaded with modest supplies. "I have a cabin up in the mountains," he explained softly as they walked. "It is not much, but it is warm and safe. I will not ask anything of you that you are not willing to give. When I have enough money, I will tear up that contract and set you free. You have my word before God." They traveled for hours along the winding mountain trail. The aspens had turned gold as they climbed. Elijah did not push her to speak. He simply walked alongside his mule, occasionally pointing out landmarks or warning her of loose stones on the path. As twilight painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, they reached his cabin. It was small but sturdy, built with his own hands against a hillside, surrounded by towering pines. Smoke would soon curl from its chimney, and Elijah felt the familiar comfort of home settle over him. He opened the door and gestured her inside. "I will sleep in the barn with the mule. The cabin is yours." The woman stood in the center of the single room, looking at the stone fireplace, the handmade furniture, the books stacked carefully on a shelf. Then slowly, so slowly, she reached up and pushed back her hood. Elijah's heart stopped. Dark curls tumbled down, framing a face he had tried to forget for 8 long years, a face he had dreamed of on battlefields, in hospital tents, during endless lonely nights in the wilderness. Her eyes, those unforgettable green eyes, met his. Hannah. The name escaped his lips like a prayer. Her chin trembled. "You recognize me? Even after all this time, even after everything, how could I ever forget you?" Elijah stepped closer, hardly daring to believe she was real. "You were to marry me. Then the war came, and when I returned, They told me you had died of fever. I visited your grave, Hannah. I wept over your headstone. My father lied. He owed money to dangerous men. He sold my contract to pay his debts, then told everyone I had passed. He thought it more respectable than the truth. I was sent east, worked in factories, passed from contract to contract. When this final term brought me here, I thought perhaps fate was being cruel, returning me to the very territory where I had lost everything. Elijah closed the distance between them, gently taking her hands in his. They were rough now, calloused from years of labor, but they were still her hands. I searched for 2 years, he whispered. I wrote letters. I traveled to every town, every settlement. When I could find no trace of you, I came to these mountains to disappear. I thought if I could not live the life we had planned, I would live no life at all. Hannah touched his weathered face, tracing the new lines that grief had carved there. I never stopped loving you, Elijah. Not for one single day. In the darkest moments, your memory was my only light. He pulled the contract from his pocket, the paper that declared she owed him 5 years of service. Without hesitation, he tore it in half, then tore those pieces in half again. You owe me nothing, he said firmly. You are free, Hannah. You have always been free in my heart. She collapsed against his chest, 8 years of sorrow finally releasing in waves of tears. He held her as the last light faded from the window, and stars began to appear over the mountain peaks. Stay, he whispered into her hair, not as a servant, not because of any contract. Stay because this cabin has been waiting for you, because I have been waiting for you. Stay and be my wife as you should have been all along. She looked up at him, starlight reflected in her green eyes. $1, she laughed softly through her tears. You paid $1 for me. Elijah smiled, the first true smile to cross his face in nearly a decade. I would have paid every cent I ever earned, every breath in my body, every beat of my heart. $1 was simply all I had. Then I am the wealthiest woman in all the territory, Hannah replied, for I have found again what I thought was lost forever. The mountain wind whispered through the pines outside as Elijah leaned down and pressed a tender kiss to her forehead. Tomorrow would bring a new chapter, a second chance neither had dared hope for. But tonight, in a humble cabin far from the cruelty of the world below, 2 souls who had been separated by lies and circumstance finally found their way home to each other.